these things.
Recording in progress.
You should be recording.
I don't want. I don't think.
Are we?
You are ready.
Okay. Okay, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, and we will start off with a roll call. McKee here, Schultz here, Behrenkamp
Here.
Nichols
Here.
and Counselor Bodema should be here shortly, just running a few minutes late. We'll go on to the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd like to stand and join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, agenda approval. Do we have any changes or additions from staff?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We do have a couple of additions for the agenda. We did get a copy of the draft June 23rd meeting minutes included in the council agenda and on your dais. We added park dedication summary ordinance and accessory dwelling ordinance amendments. Both of those we approved at the last meeting, but need a 4/5 majority to move those forward, so we've added those to the agenda. We did receive some staff, or some resident comments on Pioneer Trail that we've added to the packet as well. That came in via email this week that you all received and we have in the packet. And then lastly, we did have a revision to annual appointments. There was a clerical error on an increase on that. So those are the changes from staff.
Perfect, thank you. Anything from council? I just had one thing. It sounds like Representative Robbins might be a few minutes late, so we'll kind of play it by ear. I think maybe now we'll move her down to just after consent, and then if she's not here, we'll have to play it by ear as to which item exactly we get her in, but we'll figure it out. So for now, we'll put her after consent. And with that, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Commission representatives, we have John Horn and Sharon Meister.
Yes.
There we go. Thank you.
Sharon's here and John is joining us virtually.
Perfect. Sounds good. And then we will go on to open forum, which is for topics not on tonight's agenda. And Jessica will walk us through.
Anyone joining us in the audience who wants to talk about items not on the agenda can come to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Anyone joining us virtually can press *9 if you're on a phone and raise your hand. Otherwise, if you're joining us on an electronic device, you can press reactions and raise your hand. Mayor and council, at this time, no one is raising their hand virtually.
Okay.
I would note for those, if you'd like to come to the podium to state your name and address, that'd be great. For those joining us virtually online this evening, we're having some technical difficulties with the screen display here at City Hall. So you can follow along in your packet, but I did want those folks joining us online to let you know that we're having some technical difficulties with getting that screen out there.
All righty. Go ahead if you could just give us your name and address. For
Hi, my name is Marcia Decker, D-E-C-K-E-R. Marcia's M-A-R-C-I-A. I'm here with my husband Scott. We live at 19397 103rd Avenue. That's the Bellwether community from Pulte.
If you want to go ahead and, we have generally a 3 to 5 minute, a 5 minute time limit on remarks for this evening.
Okay, I don't know how appropriate this is going to be, so stop me if I'm out of line. We're new to the community, we're new to the state.
Welcome.
But we're here because we need some help. And we're hoping that you will look into the complaints of the residents in Bellwether. And I guess my bottom line would be that you consider doing something about the permits, the build permits. We have I could go through a list of 100 items of problems since we moved in July. I could tell you about my neighbors who, since this was such short notice, they would have been here. They've had to move out of their homes for 3 days, 4 days. They've had cracked trusses coming down through their living rooms. We had a cracked trusses. Fortunately, we had a home inspector. We had a hole in our roof. We had floods in our house. We had a gas leak. I could go on and on and on of what we had. But here we are since after July, when we closed and moved in and went through one terrible experience after the other, to having a home differential in temperature of 10 to 11 degrees. Our Christmas was ruined because our kitchen is 62. We keep our house at 73, 74. We pay a lot of money in heating, but we get no response to this in terms of the insulation in the walls or the attic. We have bowed walls in our kitchen. There's a bad stud. Our separation of our cabinets and our countertops is over a ½ an inch. The screws in our cabinets have come out. I think the cabinet will probably come down soon with everything and smash and wreck our kitchen. And one thing I would hope public safety, maybe you can help us with, we haven't had a working smoke detector since Monday. Pulte was out, but of course they did nothing. I know some of you are coming to the meeting next week at the clubhouse.
Yep.
I don't understand. I don't understand how this house and the houses on my street on 103rd could have passed inspections. We come from well-built homes, and I feel sometimes that I'm living in public housing. And I don't mean to be demeaning to anyone, but to have spent what we spent for this house and to be cold and had our Christmas dinner ruined because the food was too cold, our family was too cold. I think, this town needs to look into issuing permits to a builder like Pulte in Bellwether. And I thank you, and thanks for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Can I ask a
Marcia.
question, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
I want to ask, well, I'm pretty sure we do issue permits, but that's not your question. Can you rephrase your question? Because you said, I want this town to issue, what was your last sentence?
My question is, how does Corcoran continue to issue build permits for Bellwether, for the building that goes on
Okay,
that is so substandard?
yep. Normally, we don't address these kind of things right on the spot. I've been on the council for 7 years now, and I'm not 100% sure how the inspection jives, where the inspection line ends and the actual civil issue with the builder comes into place. So like there's a certain code that every builder in Corcoran has to meet, and I guess I'm just asking the question out loud because it was addressed.
Yep.
I don't know the answer to that. What is the answer to that?
So.
Can we get the answer?
Sure.
We probably won't right now.
I don't know that we'll be able to provide an answer tonight, other than when a building permit is issued, inspections are required, corrective action is required if they don't pass an inspection, is my understanding.
I don't
Kevin
have
works
any-
closer
I'm
with
not-
that.
I'm not able to answer that. I mean, I think I took down the address. We'll follow up with the building team. I wasn't aware of this. It hasn't made it to me. I'm surprised. It hadn't worked. I don't know if you notified anyone at the city yet.
No, we're new, and I didn't even know about this meeting until an hour or two before, or I would have brought my whole street. My neighbors would have been here, and we would have needed more chairs.
So we will look into this, follow up, and the councilor at Bottom Point will provide some information on that distinguishing line.
It would also be interesting to see differences between what the inspectors on her home and other homes on her street find versus what other inspectors elsewhere in the neighborhood in Bellwether found. If there's any kind of a discrepancy. Maybe some people are inspecting at a different level than others.
We probably only have one building
Yeah.
inspector, though,
We
right?
generally have
It's
one.
always the same person from
Yeah.
Metro?
We're a small town, we don't have multi.
Well, we have a contractor
No,
that provide,
I'm just kidding.
who knows how many.
Say that again, Kevin?
Yeah,
Couldn't hear you.
I was gonna say, I don't know, I mean, we generally have one person, I don't know if an inspection occurred with someone on vacation, so we just gotta look into the facts of this particular situation, and we can distribute that.
That'd be great.
Thank you for bringing it.
And I
Yeah,
would thank you for your time.
thank you.
Where did you move from, by the way?
We
Which-
lived in the suburbs of Chicago.
Oh, okay.
Geneva, it's a quaint little town.
Nice. Well, welcome.
And,
Yeah.
we just never experienced this type of build, so.
So we're sorry you're dealing with that, but glad you're in.
Everything is better in Minnesota than Illinois, so this is super surprising.
Well, not our house yet.
I know, that's what, shocking.
Thank you, guys, very much.
Anyone else for public forum?
I do not
Okay.
have any other public comment cards. As we're doing public comment tonight, feel free to, or if you want to speak on any of the items, feel free to hand over those public comment cards or hand them up to staff, and we can recognize you at the item you want to speak on.
Perfect. Okay. Then we'll move on to item 6, which has 6A, 6B, which is first the oaths of office for the 4 of us that were just recently re-elected, and then actually 6B, Representative Robbins, I saw you come in here somewhere. We moved you just to the end, right after consent. That works. Perfect. So we will go ahead with the oaths of office. Does that mean
Michelle's
first?
going to go ahead and do those. We'll have the mayor go first, and then we'll keep going down.
Okay, just repeat after me, please, for the oath of office for Mayor of City of Corcoran. I, Tom McKee, do solemnly swear
I, Tom McKee, do solemnly swear
to support the Constitution of the United States,
to support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and to discharge faithfully, justly, and impartially
and to discharge faithfully, justly, and impartially
the duties of the office of Mayor for the City of Corcoran, Minnesota,
the duties for the office of mayor for the city of Corcoran, Minnesota,
and to do so with my best judgment and ability.
and to do so with my best judgment and ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I, raise your hand and repeat after me, please. I, Alan Schultz, do solemnly swear
I, Alan Schultz, do solemnly swear
to support the Constitution of the United States,
to support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and to discharge faithfully, justly, and impartially
discharge faithfully, impartially, and justly
the duties of office of City Council Member
the duties of the office of City Council Member
for the City of Corcoran, Minnesota,
for the City of Corcoran, Minnesota,
and to do so with the best judgment and ability.
and to do so with the best judgment and ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
And if I could get Jeremy Nichols next, please. Raise your right hand and please repeat after me. I, Jeremy Nichols, do solemnly swear
I, Jeremy Nichols, do solemnly swear
to support the Constitution of the United States,
to support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
and to discharge faithfully, justly, and impartially
and to discharge faithfully, justly, and impartially
the duties of the office of City Council Member
the duties of the office of City Council Member
for the City of Corcoran, Minnesota,
for the City of Corcoran, Minnesota,
and to do so with my best judgment and ability.
and to do so with my best judgment and ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
me. I, Dean Berenkamp, do solemnly swear
I, Dean Berenkamp, do solemnly swear
to support the Constitution of the United States,
to support the Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
the Constitution of the State of Minnesota,
to discharge faithfully, justly, and impartially
and to discharge faithfully, justly, and impartially
the duties of office of City Council Member
the duties of the office of City Council Member
for the City of Corcoran, Minnesota,
for the City of Corcoran, Minnesota,
and to do so with my best judgment and ability.
and to do so with my best judgment and ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Michelle. Congratulations, everybody. Okay, we will quickly move on to consent. And then, like I said, we will have Representative Robbins come up after that. So we have consent agenda, consent agenda consisting of items 7A through 7F with a couple additions. Does anyone want to pull anything? Going once, going twice? Okay. Then I will entertain a motion to approve consent agenda items 7A through F.
I so move.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Then we will go on to 6B reshuffled and Representative Robbins.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. So nice to see you. My apologies for being late. I was just at the Capitol and got a
No
little
worries.
behind, so I'm sorry. For those of you who don't know, we've had redistricting, and so I'll be your new state representative for the next 2 years. Our new district is called 37A, and it's Western Maple Grove, Corcoran, Medina, Greenfield, Loretto, Independence, and Maple Plain. And so it's a great opportunity for me to serve our communities, and so I'm making the rounds of all the city councils, introducing myself for those of you I haven't met, and, you know, just wanting to make you aware of that the office for our district is open anytime you're at the Capitol. I'd love you to come and visit. I'm in 239 in the state office building, and I do a weekly newsletter, and all of you can subscribe, and that comes out every Friday. And it just sort of gives an update of bills I've sponsored, what's going on in committees as we go through the session, and the more controversial things come up, I'll give you my perspective. You may or may not always agree, and I love to hear from people, but I'll tell you from my perspective what's going on. And also, if your school group or your family or anyone wants to come to the Capitol for a tour, I would love to arrange that for you. They give public tours on the hour, and with really, you know, great professional tour guides who talk about the architecture and the history and cool stories. And then I always try to meet with constituents whenever you're there. So if I'm in committee or on the floor, they'll find me and I'll come out and hopefully get to say hi. In terms of my work, I'm chief authoring the first bill introduced to eliminate the tax on Social Security. And I have several other tax bills. Another one that will be of interest in our community is eliminating the tax on charitable gambling. As many of you know, that's been a real tough thing for our communities when the Lions and the different civic groups offer the games, but so much of the money gets taken by the state. So I'm actually running two bills on that. One is to fully eliminate the tax, and the second one is to change it from the graduated rate it is right now to a 5% flat tax. My professional staff colleagues inform me that the bill to eliminate is never going to even get a hearing. So to try to also have the other bill with leaving something there, but reducing it significantly. The current tax and a graduated level goes from, like, I believe it's 9% up to 36%. So not a lot of this money is staying in our communities. I've introduced so many bills, I'm losing track. But I'm on the tax committee, the rules committee, and the higher ed committee. And on higher ed, for those of you who are, you know, focused on issues dealing with the University of Minnesota, the MNSCU system, we have we'll be doing two important things this year: the budget for the university, as well as the 4 regions are up this time. So the regions really have a huge impact on the direction of the U. So the region elections, I'll be meeting with all the candidates, but I welcome input from anyone who has opinions on that. And then finally, I've worked with the city of Corcoran at length on a bonding bill that would help with water treatment and water supply system for the city. And I just got the jackets back today, so the bill has been introduced, but it doesn't actually get a bill number till the next, 24 hours after the next time we're in session. So the bill number should be available online next week, I hope. And I'll certainly send you a copy when the electronic version's available. And Senator Limmer, I believe, will be introducing it in the Senate very shortly. So how the bonding project seems to be going this year so far is that the things that didn't get done at the end of session last year when kind of a lot of the different deals fell apart, that bonding bill with projects from last year will move quickly. And then new projects like the one for Corcoran that's been submitted, that will go into a bonding bill, and the bonding committees will probably come and do a tour, probably in the summer. And then that would be in the second year of the biennium bonding bill. So just to give you a sense of timing on that. And hopefully we'll make it all the way through the process. But that's just kind of a high level of what's going on at the Capitol. And, I'm always available to talk with the city or any constituents. So, any questions?
Wonderful, thank you.
Any questions for Representative Robbins?
Can I ask you about a couple things
Of course.
specific to Corcoran?
I hope I know the answer.
Well, I don't know if it's just in a general sense. I know that your party doesn't have all the say in the Capitol right now, but two things that I think legislatively that can help Corcoran is we have a drug problem here and a crime problem, like many exterior suburbs have all of a sudden become hotspots for crime, and no one seems to really care or do anything about it. Can you offer some hope for that? And then our roads are falling apart, and especially here we have lots of traffic from outside of Corcoran that come through but don't pay taxes on the roads. Can you offer some hope for that?
I can certainly offer hope. I can't guarantee things will pass. So I have co-authored, so our caucus is very concerned about crime. That was one of the things that we focused on extensively, and we were hoping, obviously, to have the majority and make some real headway on that. But we are introducing bills on that, so I have co-authored a bill to make fentanyl be treated the same as heroin and increase the penalties on it. I co-authored a bill that would make straw purchases of firearms that are then used in a crime a felony. That currently is not the case. I am chief authoring a bill that will make retail crime a theft in statute. I've co-authored a bill that makes carjacking a crime in statute for the first time. That's currently not a crime, which was kind of shocking to realize. So I do think that there's a lot of things that we can do on these issues, and I do hope the majority will take these bills seriously and that we can get hearings on them. So I encourage any of you, I guess I'm your rep and I'm on board, but if you have things like that where you're concerned about, please continue to reach out to your representative or representatives in other districts that, especially who are on the committees for public safety, because that's certainly very important. We also are hoping to do some support for retention and recruitment of law enforcement, because I know all departments are struggling with that, and I've spoken with the chief about that on a number of occasions. So certainly there are things. And as for roads, I do think there will be a lot of investment in roads and bridges for the current bonding bill that they're going to try and get through early, and then in next year's bonding bill. But I'm also working on a bill that I don't have back yet that would try and help provide, there used to be a pot of money for aid for small cities, because many cities like Corcoran don't get as much in LGA or,
We get no LGA.
You get no LGA, right, and that's true of a lot of the cities out here in western Hennepin County, so we pay a lot more in taxes and we don't get a lot of the benefits for local government. So I'm working with staff on drafting this small city aid program that I believe used to exist, and it kind of fell by the wayside, so we're trying to revive that. So I'll certainly make the copy of that available, and again, encourage you, that's a state and local government committee where we need to get a hearing in that, but I'm hoping we can get strong support for that, because certainly it's a huge need for small communities.
Thank you, Chris.
Anyone else? I'll just mention one other thing that I know you and I have talked about before, is the local control issue when it comes to development. I did see some news today or yesterday, potentially, that Representative Elkins is looking at reintroducing a lot of the legislation that was proposed last year and just fell short. So that's definitely on our radar, and appreciate anything you can do to keep us up to date on how that's going at the Capitol throughout this session. And I think you know where we stand on the local control issues, so.
Yes, and I share that. I was recognized by the League of Minnesota Cities for being a champion for local control last year, and I'll continue to work on that. Another area to flag for you guys on local control is in this marijuana bill that's going through. As of the current language, their cities cannot, like, you know how you can regulate liquor or tobacco, cities have no option. You have to allow these cannabis facilities in a city. And so I think that's a huge violation of local control, and citizens should have a say in that, just like they do in other areas of regulated activity. So I'll continue to also push for local control in that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congrats.
And then I do have one thing for you, just as this is a rough draft of our legislative priorities. We'll actually be discussing and voting on them later, but if you'd like to take a look, it'll at least give you an idea of what the rest of the top issues are for us. So thanks so much for coming out tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate it.
You all. Thank you. Let
Thank
me know
you.
what I can do as well.
Thanks.
Go. All right, on to planning business. We do have a public comment opportunity for 8A and 8B. We might want to separate those out. Let's do public comment for 8A.
Can I interrupt?
Sure.
I want to, I've never done this before, but I feel like from the mountain of emails that we've had, there are a bunch of different things that people want to talk about. And I feel like we should take a temperature on the council on one thing
Okay.
before we get 45 minutes of public comment. Like if there's a bunch of, if we have a certain stance on something, then maybe, you know, like I feel like I don't have a strong desire to have a gas station there. And I think like if we have a council that's not that interested in having a gas station there, then we don't have, then the public comment can be focused on the other stuff.
Right, that's what you're saying.
And so.
That's a good idea.
And so I'll just say, I'm not that excited about having a gas station there. I'm not in favor of having a gas station there. Because it's important for the public to know that from the city council's perspective, anybody can bring an application forward and we have to look at it. We can't just say, we're not gonna look at this. And we're also bound by laws that we can't actually talk about how we'll vote on something or what we think about something until this meeting takes place. So somebody can bring forth an application, and the very first moment that the public has to see us talk about it is actually right in this meeting. So there are we've got a ton of emails, a ton of calls. They've all been good, and I appreciate that. But I don't think there's much of an appetite on council to put a gas station in that corner. And if I'm wrong, I would like to get a test of what we think about it. If I'm wrong, then we can take public comment specifically focusing on that part of it. But if I'm right, then we can take public comment and focus on the other stuff that maybe I'm a little bit kind of not certain about.
Yeah, that makes sense to
And
me.
this will be the first time you get to see us have a conversation about the actual topic at hand. Can we at least get a feel for that.
Let's do it. Do you want to start us off?
Well, I,
You kind of shared your thoughts.
I don't like it. I don't
Fair
think
enough.
we should do it. We'd have to rezone. I think there's an expectation the public has when something's zoned a certain way that,
Would we be rezoning?
it wouldn't be a PUD.
It's a PUD.
I think
Yeah,
it
it's
would
Also
be either
a
way.
CUP.
It is a PUD, so the PUD is the
Yeah.
rezoning, and that allows you to do it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So I don't have a good appetite, I don't have a big appetite for that. I'll
Gotcha.
say that off the bat.
I'll chime in a similar vein. We've got a lot of auto-related businesses in the city already. I would rather not continue to focus on that as we add additional businesses. So I'd be much more apt to see a restaurant or something in that area instead. I did ask staff to investigate what else might trigger the traffic signal warrant, because from my experience in that area of the city, it is really hard to get onto 55. And it sounded like certain kinds of restaurants could also be a warrant. So I'd be open to that, more so than a gas station.
Gotcha. I think I would agree. The main reason I was open to the gas station was because of the traffic light issue like you touched on. And I think if there are other potential options that might be a better fit, I'd be open to that. Or if we think we're comfortable with the traffic situation without a light there, then I'd also be comfortable with that. So, yeah, I don't have a strong appetite for the gas station in and of itself.
Well, I won't speak specifically to a gas station, but I will say that the threshold for us to change something that's not allowed in the area should be high. And any decision we make from any developer should not be based on that it financially makes or breaks a project. That's not for the city to make a ruling on. So any argument to that from any developer on any project just goes out in one ear and out the other for me.
For me also.
I think we're generally in agreement that we're not.
If I can jump in here, and I didn't even think the way Jeremy was thinking. I'm taking it in I'm taking things into consideration as far as for the neighborhood and obviously this light industrial park. I don't think this could happen without a signal there. I don't know how semis would get onto 55. I do not want them cutting down 19, or down Pioneer to 19, and then coming out and getting out there. We have to exhaust everything to get a signal light at that intersection. But I'm very much not in favor of a gas station. If we do talk gas station, if anything like that comes up, straight up gas station, convenience store, no intercom system, no car wash, those kind of things. I'm looking at other ways, other things also, but I didn't even think of what Jeremy talked about. But gas station, no, but I don't think an industrial park can exist there without that signaled intersection. It's gotta be. It is miserable. And that is a very weak word for the intersection of Rolling Hills Road and 55.
What's a weak word?
It's miserable to get out
Are you saying
onto
it's more than miserable?
55s. It's more than miserable. It is
Wretched.
I'd like to say a couple of other words, but I'm not going to say it with all due respect. Pioneer and 55 is not a good intersection. Introducing the semis and the other traffic that could go there, I do not want cut-through traffic. I know that Pioneer is a public road and those kind of things, but it's got to be right, and I think we up here are going to make a good decision on what's right. And then if I could also say, folks, we are one of you. So we're not here, it's not we against you guys or anything else, we're all neighbors. We want Corcoran to be a good place to live. The plans have been in place on this property for a long time. If y'all haven't seen the sign up there for the last 20 years, where have you been? Shame on you. To come up here in this podium and tell us this is a surprise to me and stuff like that, we ain't gonna listen to that, okay? It's gotta be a good plan, it's gotta be right. I think the group up here will do very well as far as recommending and stuff, but yeah, I'll get off my soapbox. I think a gas station, not cool.
Gotcha. So I think we're all generally in agreement that gas station is certainly not preferred. If there may be some other options that would get that light, we maybe be interested, that are a better fit. But I guess that's a good place to start it, and then maybe go into public comment from here. Is that what you're thinking, John?
I don't run the meeting, but
Well,
that was,
no, but
that's my suggestion.
asking for your
Yes.
input.
Yeah, I think that was I hope that was a helpful conversation, because I've heard a lot of talk about it.
Yeah.
Now we
That
can
was a
get
good
that
idea.
out of the way and talk about other things that might impact the residents.
Makes sense. All right, we will go in.
If I can
Thank
add
you.
one more
Thank you for
thing.
that. Of course.
If I can add one more thing, John said it very, very well. Probably this is the most neighborhood input we've gotten in a development. And I think each and every one of us, I know I have spent tremendous amount of hours talking to a number of you folks, reading the emails, all of those things. Thank you very much for the input, folks. It's going to affect all of us, but you guys are going to be closest to it. So, thanks.
Perfect.
That's it.
Okay, we'll go into public comment for item 8A, and so Jessica will walk us through that, and then online after that.
Thank you, everyone. I have a couple folks' names, so I'll say your name, and if you can come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. And then, generally, we limit those remarks to 5 minutes. And then anyone joining us virtually, if you want to press *9 or reactions and raise your hand if you're on an electronic device, we'll do those virtual next. First, I have Jennifer Gaston.
Good evening. We really appreciate the opportunity to be able
Can we get
to-
your name and,
Oh,
even though
sorry.
it's just name and address for the record?
So sorry.
No worries.
Jennifer Gaston, and my address is 22741 Wagon Wheel Lane. We do appreciate the opportunity to be able to voice our concerns. As you can see, we are very passionate about the project and how it will impact all of us. I think we're the newest residents to the neighborhood. We had worked my husband and I had worked really, really hard to be able to move to the property that we own now. We had previously lived in a very popular and sought-out area of the cities, but it wasn't the kind of area we wanted to raise our family in. We sought out a home in the country that we could fulfill our goal to raise our family away from the city life and have land where we could have a quiet, rural experience. After a lot of research, we decided to move to the area because we thought it could offer everything that we wanted. We feel very lucky to be living on Wagon Wheel Lane, as it has opened up the opportunity to provide a very safe and wonderful environment for us and for our family. Now, with the proposed development, we lose all the things that brought us to the neighborhood. Everything we moved away from will literally be in our backyard. My husband will talk about the development and all of the traffic that it's going to bring to basically up to our property lines and all of the adjoining streets. As you guys talked about, if anyone has ever tried to get onto Highway 55 from Pioneer Trail, it is a nightmare. I mean, you can sit for 10, 15 minutes just to turn onto that road. By bringing 3 times the amount of traffic to this intersection, it's going to create a nightmare for traffic. It will dramatically increase the amount of accidents as well as heavy traffic on those roads. I was even just reflecting on this last week as we experienced our snowstorm. Pioneer Trail was 100% snow covered for at least 2 to 3 or more days. Thinking of the traffic that will be coming on those roads in those conditions is something that will be extremely hazardous. One question that I do have is about the proposed road that will go behind the houses on south side of Wagon Wheel Lane. We were told that MnDOT would not approve any other turnoff from Highway 55. However, there are new businesses, and one of those new businesses off 55 is Adams Pest Control, and they actually have a turnoff right from 55 to their business. So my question is, how come this proposed development cannot have that as well? In the planning meeting, we also learned that the road would be 10 feet high from the ground. If this is true, can you advise how they plan to make sure that there is no damage to our property because of this? Again, thinking of this winter storm, just kind of the environment we're in now, all of that snow that's pushed off that road, all of the salt, all of the debris, and everything is going to flow right into our backyards. All of our septic systems back up to the back of our property. So all of that stuff that comes off of those roads will flow right into those systems. And how can you ensure that nothing from this road will negatively impact our systems or our property? I'm also concerned with the fact the manufacturing plant is going to be run off a septic system and well water. I currently am employed by a company where I'm exposed to manufacturing in my job. I cannot even imagine everything that comes off those machines and flowing into a septic system. Chemicals, cleaning solutions, lots of different materials all go into this. My facility has enough issues with regular city plumbing, and I can't even imagine how this will be impacted with a septic system. Are you able to advise why no environmental study was needed? From the use of the septic system and everything that will go into it, to the runoff impacts of the houses from the proposed road, I am shocked that this was not something that was needed. This development will also bring a significant amount of people into our area as well, and this is my major concern. Not only will we go from a non-developed area, we will also bring in people into the area that normally wouldn't be there. Between the amount of people with the construction of this development, then the amount of people working in the warehouse and the other proposed facilities, there will be a large influx of strangers coming into this area. With the rise in crime in the cities has been seen, there will become more opportunities for this to come right into our neighborhood. Our children can no longer play or be on our property without supervision. We can no longer leave our animals unattended on our property. I will no longer feel 100% safe working at home by myself. Our properties in general will not be safe. Currently, we can leave our cars in the driveway and we don't have to worry if they're locked. We can leave things out in the driveway and we don't have to worry about putting them away or locking them up. This will change once the development is built. The safety of our neighborhood will be gone. I know there's a lot of concerns that we have in how the construction of the road and the buildings will impact our property. I know we have a short amount of time to speak, but otherwise we could probably elaborate on a lot more things.
We're just about to 5 minutes, if you could wrap it up just a little.
Yep, you bet. I sincerely hope that you truly listen to all of our concerns. We do know the monetary benefits the city will see, but we're hoping that you will take a look at the impacts that it has on your citizens. I will be candid and tell you that when we were at the planning meeting and some of the actions afterwards, I was really disheartened. Being told the development is coming, you might as well get used to it, or the development has been talked about since 2005, so we're not really sure where this is coming from, was really not the response I would hope to hear from my city government officials. Please listen to your residents. We love living here and we want what's best. But honestly, I can tell you, this is not.
Thank you.
Can I say one thing?
Sure.
Just for your information, for anyone that comments, you might want to refrain from personal statements about your property being unlocked, because this gets televised on the internet. So.
Good point.
What was your address again? Actually, I was going to ask, but I'm looking at a map of which, never mind.
We'll get that later.
We can figure
Alan's
it out.
comments. We don't always respond to these things, but it's important to know that there will be environmental studies done on the site. Like, I've read a lot about water and environmental studies. There's the most powerful governmental entity in our area is not the city of Corcoran, it's the watershed. The watershed does so much study and so much look-see and annoying review. I was our liaison, I was on the watershed. Tons of questions about the water, and that stuff will be looked at and hyper-analyzed. And I think that it's not true that it won't be looked at from an environmental standpoint. It absolutely, 100% will be looked at from an environmental and water standpoint.
Jessica really wants to interject.
I just wanted to interject that we did do an environmental assessment worksheet, so other agencies also did look at it. They did not require additional environmental review, but there were groups that did look at that as well.
We should probably note we're taking all these questions down,
Yes,
and you
we'll-
guys will address.
So yeah, so
We'll
typically
address
when we get
more of them
questions,
as
we'll make
we-
notes and then we'll
Otherwise, we'll
answer
be
them
here all night.
at the end in case there's any repeats or anything like that. So, perfect. If anyone would like to go next.
Next, I have Robert Gaston.
You don't know the previous speaker, do you? Okay.
You don't need to state your address.
Yeah, we've got your address.
We got it.
That's all right, they can come over. My name's Rob Gasson. Thanks for hearing us out. As you said, I've been a member of Wagon Wheel Lane for about 5 years now. When selecting our home, we sought to move to an area that offered a rural community that not only fit our values, but supplied the quiet life we wanted. However, we feel that way of life is in jeopardy. I want to go through some of the Pella plans. I want to talk about traffic on Kimberly Lane. According to the project submitted, the road will be built adjacent to the back of our lot. It looks like a long way on your map. It's 20 yards. According to the plans, it will be only a way to access the warehouse. The expansion to Rolling Hills is not in the immediate future and has no plans of being built for immediately. This means all access to development will come down this road. Also looking at the plan, they are proposing 168 parking spots. They are planning on 1 parking spot for every 2 employees. It's right in your plan. That to me means they're running 2 shifts because you're obviously not taking buses out there. That means it's 16 hours a day, 386 cars will travel that road 20 yards from my back step. They're also planning on building 2 more additional warehouses behind there. So you're looking at doubling and tripling traffic back behind there. I know that you guys say this development's inevitable, it's gonna happen, but your 2005 development was storage units, it was not warehouses and light manufacturing. And also looking at the plans, they're proposing 18 truck spots in this 1 warehouse. And a fairly conservative estimate means that there's going to be 2 to 3 spots daily filled in those trucks. That means 36 to 54 trucks are going to be traveling 20 yards from my back step, 16 hours a day. That creates a lot of traffic and noise in the neighborhood that is zoned in low-density residential. It is clearly, as a matter, will directly have an adverse effect on the enjoyment of our existing neighborhoods. I can't imagine that any council member on this would want this in 20 yards from their back step, having to listen to traffic nonstop. This is an adverse effect on our neighborhood. This is awesome things for you to consider on item 6, page 6 on your council sheet. Developer plans have no way to combat this noise issue. There's no sound wall. There will only be trees to block it, and trees only block so much noise. How does the city plan on compensating the neighborhoods north of this road for the noise complaints that they're going to have to listen to? And why is an industrial zone being built in the middle of a quiet residential area? We are going from rural living to every open space being occupied by buildings. Another concern is the traffic on the intersection of 55 and Pioneer Trails, that you guys have talked about. It's had its fair share of fatal accidents. As we said, right now they're not planning on building a stoplight, as they're basing everything on a study done in 2006, 17 years ago. You can't tell me that development has not drastically changed in this area in 17 years. The only route for these cars to take is the Pioneer Trail to 29. This is a narrow winding road which would require a stoplight or some kind of intersection as well. The amount of traffic through these intersections would create a burden on public streets and back up an already congested 55. We are also concerned that the use of septic systems as well water. You said that, I believe it was Min Council, said that they didn't think there would be a problem, but they weren't really too sure about it. Seems like something we should check into. What happens to all the chemicals, as my wife said, as the septic systems only hold solid waste. This is appalling that, as the study was not done on this project. And I know that you guys said there was, but if you go through the plans, it said that no study was required on this project.
I want to get you off that point. That's not true. They have an environmental study, and then they have an even greater, like if they find some really unusual findings, they have a secondary environmental assessment. And so I want to stop that conversation about no environmental studies have been done on the area. Because there have been, and it's extensive. It's for public review.
We reviewed it over the summer. It was like 300 pages long.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's just,
make that available.
there's no reason for the city of Corcoran to build this without having the utilities in place to support this system. And you guys have absolutely no plans of putting it, you're getting they're promising to build the corridors to put the water and the sewage in, but the city of Corcoran has no immediate plans to hook this up. So it's like in the future, maybe we'll hook this up, but we don't know when, there's no plans to get it done. As a resident that's directly affected by this development, we ask that you turn down the rezoning proposal. We know that we can't stop development being made, but we can stop you guys allowing them to have a PUD to change and develop outside of your guys' rules and regulations. It seems like this project is being pushed through with all the aspects it would affect. It's destroying an established neighborhood while offering nothing positive to those residents. In fact, the opposite could be said. The council needs to remember the wishes that it was elected to represent instead of the ways to increase the Corcoran tax revenue. We hope that you guys will take a look and think in our best interests as you pass. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, you guys.
Next, we have Mr. Roaring. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And then next, we've got Kristen Bloomquist.
Kristen Blumquist, 6330. You got my info? Okay. So my main concerns have been addressed. The gas station was just really getting my dander up. We are just family people, just like the Gastons. I still have 6 kids at home, and once again, Corcoran, I mean, we did so much research and picked our area for so many specific reasons. You know, it was quiet, but my husband commutes to the city, but sometimes he works from home. We wanted small acreage with neighbors, but, you know, not postage stamp yards. And just the safety that the city of Corcoran was, I mean, it just was like, pick me, you know, and we just dove right in, and we have loved it. We've been there for going on 9 years. And this proposed plan, I have seen the for sale sign, and we have talked about, like, what would we do? You know, what would we do if they put in a subdivision right there? Or, you know, we didn't know what it was zoned for. It was just me and my husband having these conversations. And there are so many little things with this plan that would totally affect our everyday lives. So it's just all the little quiet things that we do and love. We take a sauna every night, and we're talking about major light pollution, you know, which defeats the purpose of being outside in the dark. The noise pollution, I mean, we kind of joke when we hear a semi hit the rumble strips, and we're like, oh man, I hope they don't, you know, I hope they're fine. But this is semis like on our road with my kids playing in the front yard. So we're not directly on Wagon Wheel, we're one house north. But this would be major traffic in our area. So just the safety concerns for my family. There's many families on our road. There's grandkids on the road. Like I still have a lot of little kids at home, and we are not planning on leaving. This is where we are staying. We have done tons of work to our house, and feel like we have really invested in the community, and we're close to our neighbors and love everything about it, and just don't want anything to change. But if it has to, that it's something that fits into our area and doesn't take away from the reasons we moved there in the first place. So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen.
This time, I don't have any other comment cards in front of me, but anyone joining us virtually can press *9 or click raise your hand if you want to address the council on this item.
While we're waiting for that to happen, the EAW is part of the March 24th, 2022 packet for anybody who wants to look for that.
You want to say that louder? Everybody hear that?
I would actually add to that the notice of decision on the EAW, which includes the traffic study and the full EAW, was actually approved on May 26th.
Okay.
And that has the full final
everything?
version with the mitigation strategies.
Thank you.
Good to note. Okay, so no one else
And
online?
no one else is joining us online. I think before we get maybe into the staff presentation, there are a couple items that I wrote down to just talk about a little bit. Highway 55 access is, the state permits the access, and so the note about access and other properties, it's a bit dependent on the state for access depending on where it's at on, along Highway 55. And then there was some additional traffic study with that EAW, and so Kevin may be able to talk to that a bit more, but there was some recent traffic numbers done as part of the EAW, so that's something else to note.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah?
Yes.
Do we have any documented fatal accidents at that road in 55?
That's
That'd be a Matt question.
good question. I'd have to talk with public safety. I don't know off the top of my head. If we do, Matt's in the other room. I can send him a message and try to get an answer
Great.
on that.
Or else we can pull that report and distribute that to council later. There's a
Yeah.
database that tracks that.
We've got that before. It should be easy.
Yep.
That would be part of.
Excuse me really quick, we can't hear you. If you speak a little louder.
Trying to turn these up maybe a little bit. Yeah, get this loud. Is that better?
Sounds good.
Perfect.
Perfect.
I usually have two microphones and they took one away.
I've got them all.
Yeah.
He started arguing with himself, so we had to restrain him.
So we did do some updated traffic studies with that, but we'll look into get some information to council on any fatalities that we can find.
Perfect. Is there any other questions that we need to go over that you had?
There was a question with regards to the salt runoff from roadways.
Yeah, salt, I did have a salt runoff from roadways question. I think maybe Kevin can talk to that from a watershed perspective, but.
I mean, it would be, this would be ultimately be a public street, so it would be similar to all other public streets. There is not, chloride is there's no real rules against it. It's a very popular conversation on chloride, so the watersheds are evaluating that. But this project follows all the state and local rules related to water quality and runoff and rates. But, so there isn't like a specific monitoring thing with salt chloride right now. Some of these, like some of the feedback we might get from the watershed that we anticipate, and this doesn't go to watershed until at this point in the project, so we don't have their position, but a likely recommendation based on attending those meetings would be some sort of chloride management recommendation for larger lots. I anticipate that being a recommendation from the watershed, not a requirement.
Kevin, can you speak to the construction of the road and how that would convey stormwater, salt on the street, where that would go?
Well, generally, anything on the road goes into the storm sewer structures, which then flow into the ponds, which then there's a water quality element in the ponds, and then it's discharged to the next downstream water body. That's the rules. So, and even the boulevards are sloped back into the street. So if there was, we pushed it back or whatever, it would melt back into the street.
So it's going to go into the wetlands at the bottom of the lake.
It would go into the, it's part of the precipitation that falls on the road, so it would go into the pipes and into the ponds and be treated just like any other salt we put in the city. So it would ultimately follow the drainage path.
Thank you.
And one other note I had written down was septic, and there were some concerns on septic and well water, or septic, and that's all permitted by Hennepin County. So.
Oh, yeah, well, I just wanted to add, industrial septic is permitted by, it's a different permit than residential, so Hennepin County regulates residential septic, but industrial septic, I believe, is a state permit based on SIC code. So it's not the city of Corcoran that regulates it, but there's a specific permit that deals with these type of applications.
Okay, thank you. We'll do one last call for public comment on this item, and then we'll head on to the staff presentation. So if there's anyone else that hasn't spoken,
If you want to.
if you could come up to the podium, your name and address.
It just catches on the recording for those who aren't able to make it today. So
It's
thank
Bill
you.
Mauer, 22810 Wagon Wheel Lane. I heard Representative Robbins mention new bonding bills, and if I did misunderstood, it was roads and bridges was involved. I'm just wondering, the Highway 55 corridor coalition project is a priority project, and I'm wondering if the bonding bill for roads and bridges will move that forward, and how that will affect the development, given that that's now going to be 4-lane highway from Arrowhead to Pioneer Trail. So I'm hoping that's something that we can dig deeper in and find out more information.
Sure, Kristen, if you'd like to speak to that.
Excuse me, thank you for raising that. So the Highway 55 expansion project has currently been applied for through a Corridor of Commerce grant, which is separate from the bonding process. But because I am concerned about whether that will work, we are also drafting a bonding bill as well, so that we'll have kind of two approaches working simultaneously to see if we can get that done. That bill is not back from the revisor's office yet, but if that does go either through Corridor of Commerce or bonding, I'm not sure what the deadline on the Corridor of Commerce grant is, but if it goes through bonding, it would be not this calendar year, it would be for the 2024 bonding bill, so it wouldn't, I don't know how then long it would take to start, but the earliest from a bonding perspective would be for the 2024 year.
Thank you. And just to touch on that briefly, I have seen and staff has seen the preliminary plans that the coalition has drawn up on what the improvements would be. And I don't think there was any changes in terms of access or anything like this that the expansion to 4 lanes would cause. It would just be a wider or another lane for traffic flow. So hopefully it wouldn't be as much of a bottleneck, but it shouldn't change anything in terms of the impact in Corcoran.
James Anderson, 22835 Wagon Wheel Lane. Been there for about 9 years. I'm a rural Minnesota guy. I grew up north, and I lived in Minneapolis, North Minneapolis, South Minneapolis. I moved out here for all the reasons these folks live here. I'm proud to say I've left my wallet in my vehicle unlocked overnight, and my keys to ignition. Come and get it. I want to second everything these folks said. I wanted to bring up aquifer. We all have private wells. There's been a lot of talk about sewer here, but not a lot of talk about private water. So when I see a study, I want to see a study that convinces me it doesn't affect our aquifers. Top runoff, that's one thing. Into the neighbor's pond and the lake across 55, that's another thing. But we have our private well. We have private wells. So I just want to put that on record. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I think with that, we'll close public comment and go ahead.
One more.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Thank you for pointing that out.
Hi, Karen S., 6225 Pioneer Trail. Just wanted to add another comment as far as the safety, and we've commented about Highway 55 Pioneer Trail. That intersection is something that we all encounter on a daily basis. At least once a week, I am almost hit head-on by people who cannot make a right-hand turn into their own lane. There's no possible way that business vehicles and trucks are going to be able to turn into the proper lane. That is something that infrastructure needs to be there before any of these large, businesses are brought into our residential area. Excuse me. And if you look, when on page 5 of 19 in the planning document, it says that the city must review this request for compliance with the PUD standards. Number 5 states that the planned development will not create an excessive burden. One of the things it states is on streets. It would certainly have a huge burden on the streets, not to mention all of us who have been homeowners here for decades. And it's sad to hear that local communities are prioritizing building statuses for eagles, yet we're feeling like Corcoran is not hearing and prioritizing us as human residents. we do appreciate the comments, and we do appreciate the council all the time and the receptiveness to our public comments. And we appreciate that you are some of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay. I'm going to the staff report.
Go to the next slide, I think. So this is the site, we know where it is. Next slide, I should probably move this closer to me. Next slide, please. So this is a request for a rezoning from light industrial, which it is zoned today, to planned unit development, a preliminary plat and a preliminary PUD development for a 5-lot industrial park on this 56-acre site. An EAW, as I said, was completed earlier this year, and that does include a traffic study and other environmental analysis. It is on our website. It's certainly available to folks by reaching out to staff. A similar plan was approved in 2005 with a gas station on the corner. That did not proceed, and all of those approvals have expired. That's why we needed to redo the environmental study. We did not use anything from the 2004 AUAR as part of our analysis of this project. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on December 1st, and they did ultimately, after some discussion, vote 3-1 to recommend approval with a couple of conditions. They added some conditions to encourage the use of native landscaping in the project instead of turf, and recommended denial of the request for the gas station, which we talked about this evening. That is included in your draft resolution, so that reflects the Planning Commission's recommendation. Following the Planning Commission meeting, the applicant held an open house with residents on January 5th. Staff planner Natalie McEwen was at the meeting, provided a summary that was included in my staff report. You also got a staff report from Mr. Maurer, and probably others, but that's the one I've seen. And I also wanted to note in the staff report, we did, engineering staff did meet with MnDOT on January 4th as well to talk about this project, to talk about the Highway 55 project. And just in short, nothing has changed from what they included in their original staff report and comments. Next slide. Okay, and this is the site. It is guided and zoned for light industrial today. The industrial buildings are permitted and have been planned on this site. That is not a change. The change is the rezoning from light industrial to planned unit development for some flexibility, primarily in setbacks, but we'll talk about that on the next slide, or then maybe the next one, if you go to the next one. This is the site plan. This plan includes in the upper right-hand corner mini storage. It is Park Place Storage. It's similar to the, it's the same developer as the one on County Road 19. So a lot of buildings, a limited number of traffic. Next to that is an unknown user. On the south side, on the southeast corner is Pella. It's a distribution plant. It's not a manufacturing plant as currently drafted. The building next to it is unknown at this time. It may be a future expansion for Pella or another user, but it's shown as a warehouse site, and then pond, and then on the corner is their request for the gas station. If that, as drafted, the PUD does not allow that, if you approve the resolution as drafted, so that would be revised to another light industrial use, a use that's permitted in the I-1 zoning district. The road connection is on Pioneer, where it needs to be. It's as far back from Highway 55. MnDOT has commented on this twice officially in writing, and then again, we had the meeting on January 4th. As the project moves forward, we will certainly be continuing to work with MnDOT on the intersection improvements on Highway 55 and Pioneer. The street would likely be numbered on the west side of Pioneer. The platted right-of-way is Kimberly Lane, but on this side, it would be 62nd. And that street, 62nd, would ultimately, at some future date, when the property to the east develops, would extend to Rolling Hills Road on the east, and at some future date, if the property to the west develops, would connect all the way out to 19. And that is shown on our comprehensive plan and in our southeast Southwest District plan. Next slide. So this is the colored rendering. It's a little bit easier to see the massing of the buildings. At this time, the developer has indicated that it would be a multi-phase project. Phase 1 would be the southeast building for Pella, right there, thank you. And the first portion of the mini storage building in the northwest, that would be phased as well, but initially, I think Building B is the one that would go in with Phase 1. So that entire road would get built, as well as the intersection improvements on Pioneer Trail and 62nd, and Pioneer Trail and Highway 55. And again, those improvements, although a traffic signal will not be provided if it's all industrial, because it cannot meet warrants. MnDOT controls, even if we said it has to be a traffic signal, MnDOT will not allow a traffic signal unless it meets warrants. There would still, however, be improvements at that intersection, turn lane improvements, widening of that intersection, et cetera, that the developer would still be responsible for. Next slide. So the 5 lots range from 4 to 16 acres. And again, the 3 of the lots, as I mentioned, are very conceptual. And we have proposals for only the 2 eastern lots. The proposal did ask for that gas station again. We can move beyond that. So next slide, Jessica. I know this is from the staff report. I know it's unreadable, but I still wanted to talk about the putative flexibility that's requested is primarily because of the narrow piece of land between Highway 55 and Wagon Wheel properties. Does require some flexibility on some of the setbacks, both off of Highway 55 and on 62nd Avenue. So the applicant is requesting setback flexibility for parking from both Highway 55 and 62nd Avenue for that southern chunk of buildings, Block 1. And also for lots 1 and 2 on the north side, both reduced parking and building setback flexibility. They've also asked for some flexibility from wall signage to, our code only allows signage at the front door elevation, on one elevation where the front door is. Because of the Highway 55 frontage, they've asked to be able to split the amount of signage that would be normally allowed on that north side of the buildings on Highway 55, to split it between that elevation and the south elevation. And staff does recommend approval of that. The amount of signage isn't anymore, but it's split between 2 elevations. There was a request for additional signage for the gas, which I think may be irrelevant, but staff did not support the second freestanding sign for that gas station. But again, without the gas station, it's not important. Some flexibility from building materials and the ability to allow landscaping to be spread across the site rather than on individual lots. And why that's important, it allows them to focus the landscaping on the west side near the residents. Same thing to calculate impervious surface area on a project-wide basis. And the creation of Outlot A without frontage for our city well site.
Can I ask a question during the middle of the presentation?
Sure. Go for it.
Is the road, because it was just a couple of slides ago, is Wagon Wheel permanently cul-de-saced? It looks like it's permanently cul-de-sac.
Yeah.
There's no
Go
ghost
back to that
plat.
slide. Correct. Wagon Wheel is a cul-de-sac, and with this development, it is not intended to come through. There's a wetland there. It's a little hard to see on this image, but that
Pretty big
there is a
on it.
wetland on that.
Yeah.
At the end.
It's on the map too. I'm just asking. Okay, thank you.
So that's the general benefits. You can go to the next slide. The materials for the industrial buildings on the north side of 62nd is requested. You reviewed this with the concept plan. I think some of our material standards are a little bit, need to be refreshed a bit for current material standards. You were comfortable with that insulated metal panels for the self-storage building. The architectural plans for Pella do comply with our ordinance standards. No PUD flexibility is requested. You can see the image on the lower left of what that building is. It's got their yellow brand accent colors, but tilt-up concrete panels, and I think a good number of windows facing the street there. So next slide. Talked a lot about the EAW already, but the new public street, we've talked a little bit about this. I don't know that I need to talk more about that, but I do want to mention the turn lanes on Pioneer Trail again, as well as improvements on Highway 55. The traffic signal, ignore that, that's not part of this right now. But well and septic is temporary until such time as municipal services are available, and so they're planning, the way we're working with engineering to align the road is to preserve space for that utility corridor. And one of the things that's noted in the staff report is the landscaping plan as shown probably doesn't work long-term, because some of those trees are in that future utility corridor. So we want to work with them to make sure that we can push those trees on the north side where that future utility corridor is, push them towards the property line and preserve that utility corridor. The last thing we want is to plant trees that go away when that sewer comes through. The challenge, again, with that pinch site is it's hard to stagger trees. So one of the things that maybe could happen, and this is not recommended, wasn't specifically in the recommendation from the Planning Commission, but we could install a fence on that north property line. We could install some larger trees. One of the things that we can't really do because of that corridor is stagger trees like we like to. We like to do a double row of plantings, and there's just not space right there to do it on this landowner's property. So there may be some ability to plant off-site on the wagon wheel property or fencing and landscaping. So I just want to call that out because of that utility corridor on the north side of 62nd. It is very pinched, as we've talked about a couple times. The south side of Kimberly then will have the small utility corridor, electric, internet, et cetera, and that is where the sidewalk will be. The plans note future sidewalk, but that will be built as part of this project by this developer. Next slide.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go for it.
Kendra, why can't the utility corridor be on the south side, period, instead of, so we can plant? Or we could recommend planting?
You'd still have the small utility corridor on the north side. It would be slightly smaller, but I don't know, from an engineering perspective, I'm trying to recall why we wanted it on the north side.
I think it had to do with the crossings and the connections.
Just the overall, it's,
I think are the utilities on the south side?
Yeah. On the south side.
Yeah, I think you.
Oh, I'm sorry. They're on the north, yeah, they are on the south side adjacent to Wagon Wheel, and it's the small utility corridor on the north. It jumps across as soon as you get past the Wagon Wheel neighborhood, and then it's on the north side. I apologize for the confusion. So it is on the south side by Wagon Wheel, but we still have that small utility corridor, and that pinches it. There's not a lot of space if you look at that dimension.
you know, I've been out there instead of the pictures and stuff, I've been there looking and stuff. Small utilities are defined as?
Electric, internet, gas.
And all of those things can be bored, so why can't we insist on more trees?
You can have some
and
trees,
those
but you
kind of
just don't have enough, I don't believe you have enough room for a
Distance.
double row of trees. But we certainly put in the staff report that they need to do better, and you can be more specific about what that better is. We just don't believe as staff, you're going to be able to do what we've done on some other projects with a double row of landscaping, given the amount of space.
That was part one of it. Part two of it is that Kimberly Lane or 62nd, whatever, that distance from Highway 55 to where it is now is determined by us as the city or the state saying that that road has to be?
The access to Pioneer is dictated by the city, because that's our road.
Okay.
What happens at the intersection of 55 and the 55 right-of-way is determined by the state, because that's a DOT right-of-way.
So my question is, to move the street to give us some more flexibility to put in more screening for the neighbors if this were to go through is just not possible, or?
Well, just you generally want to create as much spacing as you can, so ultimately there'll be stacking and more turn lanes, so you want to keep your intersections a certain spacing from
Got it.
other intersections. So
And again, it gets back to me,
And then
They're
just
gonna
real
be
quick,
stacked enough, so.
just real quick to add on, it's more of an awareness thing with the small utilities. They can be installed and the trees planted over them, but the small utility companies, if they have to make a repair and upgrade, they have rights to that. So what would happen in the
Understood.
future is they could take a bunch of trees down and we would have no ability to make them replace it, because.
I understand.
So it's more of a, don't let the tree go 20 feet tall and then have to cut it down and then we have a gap there. So it's more of an awareness. You can certainly plant them. They're gonna not last as long just due to what's underneath them.
Thanks.
So we really have 20 feet at the pinch point there between the property line and the curb line, and 10 feet of that is that small utility corridor. And 20 feet is really hard to double space a row
I
of trees.
understand completely. I
Could
just
you move
wanted
it
to
5
ask the
feet
question
and then
for
get enough to do the
everybody.
second row something smaller?
I mean, I think we can do, we have 10 feet. We always will try to squeeze everything away, but long-term, those right-of-way DNUs will fill up.
Yep.
So we can cheat it in the short term. When we start talking 20, 30 years, then it's gonna be more problematic. So we can look at cheating it a little bit. I mean, we're early we have to set that. We can cheat a little bit. I just don't wanna make promises that we're gonna push it far.
Yeah,
We can certainly look at making sure if there's a possibility to tweak it 5 feet, we can evaluate that if that's direction from you guys.
then one more tangent,
Yeah.
if I may.
Go for it.
Citywide Wi-Fi, all of that stuff,
Broadband?
the whole broadband thing, that all goes into effect citywide within the year?
Yeah, I think we're
Which
waiting on some
includes this
details,
area and
but
such?
should be about,
If I remember all my quick reading and stuff,
Yeah.
somebody sent an email saying, we don't even have Wi-Fi out here, we use Hughes Internet. I already know it sucks because I got the same thing going on at my place. I'm happy for broadband. This goes in out here, whether this thing comes in or not, correct?
correct.
We're working with Comcast. They actually sent me an email today to start talking about the next steps with our project. So we're trying to schedule something in the next couple of weeks, but we have been awarded the grant, and we're just trying to now finalize the pieces that go into it and get the construction ready.
And typically what I've seen, the planning, implementation, actual build-out to operation is about a year, so.
So a tangent for everybody that doesn't have internet right now, other than a goofy satellite, it's coming.
Can I ask a question about what Dean brought up about Kimberly Lane's proximity to 55, and you mentioned that it had to do with the turning in from 55, having, you have to have so much distance. Can that distance be shortened if there's a dedicated turn lane?
You wanna try to get as much as you can as a general rule. Like I said, we might be able to move that a little bit back if that, there's engineers kind of directive and what's preferred long-term, and there's a balance of a buffer, I guess. So I wouldn't move it significantly. Are you talking about the west side or this east side?
You're talking about the east side.
I'm telling you about like a dedicated turn lane
Yeah.
from 55 onto Pioneer and off to Kimberly.
Yeah.
Or
So-
62, you're talking,
Yeah.
62nd.
Is that what it is?
It's
Kimberly.
It says Kimberly on there, but.
Okay,
It's
so,
gonna be
so
62nd.
you're into the turn lane already at like 288 feet, I believe, so
So there will be a
usually as a
dedicated-
design guideline, you want to be out of the turn lane, but we don't have that option here, so it's pushed as far north as possible to make the connection. Now, whether you move it 5 feet to create enough room for another buffer, that's probably not going to make enough difference to dramatically change anything.
There's not a dedicated turn lane on this plan, though, improvement on Pioneer, right?
There is. There's turn lanes, off-site turn lanes on Pioneer and turn lanes on 55. That will happen regardless of the signal.
Okay.
And then also, there's some dedicated right-of-way on the west side that we're trying to also align with for safety, future safety considerations, having the roads aligned. But like I said, 5 feet, if that's enough to create a better buffer, I mean, I would think we could accommodate 5 feet. I don't know, splitting the difference between the two property lines, I don't know that engineering would recommend So, it'd be more of a minor adjustment than, say, splitting the property lines between Wagon, the north property line of 55. I think the engineer would say that's not recommended. But moving it 5 feet to accommodate extra buffer, I think that is a fair conversation.
I'd be in favor of exploring that, and even if it doesn't get us room for a double planting, it might get us room for some combination. I know, Kendra, you mentioned potentially fencing, or something else we've done on previous projects is some mature plantings in specific locations. So some.
Should we make that a condition that we add to the approval resolution before we vote on that later on, just so we don't have to keep revisiting it or remember it in a half hour when we get to that?
The 5 feet?
I don't know if we want to memorialize 5 feet specifically. Maybe we just say the one condition is the road shifts enough to fit a double row of landscaping. And it might be 4 feet, it might be 8 feet, but some small number to let you fit in some additional layers of.
Only issue I'd see there is, what if there isn't a adjustment that can be made that can actually fit the double row? If it can, great.
I think it depends what you put in the double row. There should be something that would be viable.
Sure, did you have a comment? Oh, I thought I saw you raise your hand. Sorry. Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
I derailed, I think I interrupted Kendra's presentation. Do you have more to finish, Kendra?
I do, and this
Sorry.
slide's probably the only important slide, because it's the only thing that wasn't clear, well, I think it's the only thing that wasn't super clear in the staff report. So after following the Planning Commission, the applicant did specifically submit a request for PUD flexibility on parking, and I talked about it in the staff report, but it didn't make it into the draft resolution, so I wanted to just highlight. Our code requires 1 space per 1,500 square feet for warehousing, and they have requested to be able to construct 1 space per 2,000 and provided some analysis from other cities that are using that 1 per 2,000. The plans for Lot 2 on the south, which doesn't have a user, shows 112 spaces where 111 is requested. And so I don't think they don't need PUD flexibility today. They'd like it to use that 1,500 as the number moving forward when they have a user. But as of today, it complies with the concept. However, on Lot 3, the Pella lot, using our code requirements, the code requires 168 parking spaces for Phase 1. And the plans show 172 total, 126 being built now and 46 with proof of parking, which complies for Phase 1 under our code, but Pella believes that's far more than they need. They're concerned about their ability to commit to future expansion as shown on the plan, and so they're requesting the PUD flexibility. I said in the staff report, staff's supportive of that, looking and talking with other cities, we think that is reasonable. Pella expects to have 60 employees, 70 after the future expansion, and so looking at that in combination with what other cities are using for warehousing, we feel comfortable with that. The resolution as drafted, Resolution 2023-03, 11C, still says what it said at Planning Commission, which is that they had to show compliance. If the council is comfortable with the flexibility requested, I've suggested some language that we could add to the resolution that would say they're granted flexibility to allow the 126 spaces for Phase 1 and 2. Proof of parking would be provided and preserved. And if parking demand, parking would be reevaluated with the Phase 2 construction, and if adequate parking is not on site, we can require construction of the proof of parking. So again, keeps the impervious surface down. They feel strongly that they don't need it for the number of employees, and staff can support that. It just, again, I put it in the staff report and missed it in the resolution between Planning Commission and Council. So I did want to highlight that. That may be something you want to consider if you do move ahead with approvals. Next slide.
Have we done that with any other projects?
That's a good question.
Not that I recall.
Yeah, I don't recall it either.
We don't what? It's on a reduction like that.
Allowed that much parking flexibility on any other projects. You know, when you think about the expansion of with ProTech and things like that.
Well, we did allow some flexibility for Corcoran Farms, in the sense that their parking complies, and we limited the mix of office and warehouse on there. And they said when they have a tenant, they may come back. We didn't actually grant it, but we did talk about whether that was too much parking. But no, we did not grant flexibility for that one. So certainly something to think about and consider. Landscaping, I think we've kind of talked about this, so Planning Commission, though, did modify this, and it is reflected in your resolution. They wanted to encourage natural landscaping instead of turf grass, and wanted to encourage the trees to be relocated from maybe the southeast corner to the northwest corner to provide more screening for the residential properties. Next slide. This, again, has a request for a preliminary plat. The preliminary plat simply creates the lots. That does comply with all ordinance requirements, except for Outlot A, which does not have frontage on a public street. Outlot A would be deeded to the city for a potential well site. That's in the northwest corner of the site, north of the pond. Thanks, Jess. Yep, right there. And there is access provided around the pond for that. That would be one of the benefits of the PUD. Next slide. So this is the PUD flexibility. I'll skip through that. We've been through that in the staff report if you go to the next slide. So the options tonight, if the council finds that the ordinance standards have been met, they should move to recommend approval of the 4 items as recommended by the Planning Commission. Again, that recommendation does not include the gas station and therefore does not include the traffic signal. If you feel that the PUD standards have not been met, you should move to deny the request. We've included a resolution for denial. And then lastly, if there's something missing that you'd like more information on, you could table the item to the January 26th or February 23rd meeting. And just for your reference, the 120-day period expires March 1st. So I'm happy to answer any questions. The applicant is also here, Mr. Mayor, and I know would be happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you. Okay.
We have a presentation from the applicant.
Is there anything?
Normally we have one, so I'm wondering.
It varies, but today we don't have any formal presentation, but certainly if you have questions for the applicant, they're here, and we'll be happy to answer them.
Sure. Go right ahead.
My name is John Roush, and I'm one of the owners of the property. And I've got my team here, co-partner Lou Gabbard, and our civil engineer, Joe Rabbit. My kids taught me how to make notes on my phone. So, paying attention, you should know that. So we bought this property about 8 years ago, I think. But we were involved with United Properties for the last 20 years on this property, trying to get it, working towards a development. The first development plan that Kendra had seen, it was very, very dense, and it incorporated utilities from Medina. So Medina was going to provide city sewer and water, bring it up to the property, and there's going to be several 100,000 square feet of industrial on the property. When we bought it under the pretext that that road was going to go through where it is. We didn't put it there, didn't want it there. We prefer that it just cul-de-sac into our sleepy little development, including Park Place storage on the north, just these storage condominiums, and then some industrial buildings on the south side. And we would like a light on 55 is the other thing that we really, wanted. Mm-hmm. However, in order to get that, you had to warrant it. I'm using big words that the engineers taught me, but you had to warrant it with demand, like a gas station. No gas station's going to go here, guys. It's going to go to 19 or somewhere else. There's no southbound traffic on Pioneer. It's shown so that we can ideally get a light someday. We really would like a light to lighten up that traffic. I've sat there myself. My farmer complains about it. We agree. We got families and kids. He lives down the road. We don't want accidents there. That's not even in our vision. And we're not going to get any industrial users that are heavy traffic users. Pella's going to have 30 employees per shift, I think. They got 60 employees, 30 per shift, and that's a big deal for them, the traffic out on Highway 55. And we're not going to get any other heavy employee, heavy traffic users that are going to come to this thing. That's the first thing they do when they come and look at a site, is they try to understand their ingress, egress. They don't want to go past residential, they don't want to go past schools and churches, and they can't afford to sit behind a train or on Highway 55, waiting for traffic. Just a couple other comments that I heard from some of you in the audience. I mean, we have septics, we have wells, you know, very much so in tune to that. We had to do an environmental assessment worksheet. We spent a lot of money and a lot of time. This is our third crack at trying to get this property developed. So this environmental assessment worksheet included all kinds of environmental stuff with the watershed. It included traffic. The engineers will tell you exactly what all that stuff was. Air quality, I believe, Joe. And I mean, this stuff I don't understand. I'm just a farm kid from Mankato. So, I mean, well, I know what the runoff does, and I know where that goes, but it all goes into NERP ponds. It goes into these ponds, these sedimentation ponds, and it does not go right into the wetlands. That's, the watershed's very, very strict about that. As far as native grasses go, we'd love that. We think that'd be a great idea, if, you know, to the extent you all wanted to make some suggestions. There's Prairie Restoration's a company that we deal with once in a while. You know, love to have them out there and offer some suggestions. As far as this road goes, this Kimberly Lane coming in, you know, something that I know that the city can't necessarily mandate maybe, but we're 100% open. If we could shift some of these trees and plantings over along Kimberly Lane, along where the residential lots are in your backyards, if you have suggestions, we care, but we want you guys to care, and we want you to choose whatever plantings go back there. That would be just fine by us. We don't want all these trees over by the industrial buildings and all that stuff. So if we could shift some over, and I think we said that in our neighborhood meeting, that we're definitely willing to do that. Also, as far as internet goes, you know, we're on board with that. We've been talking to a company called Lakeside Networks. Whether it's them or the city, we are going to have good internet out here. The internet guys told me it's 100 times faster than what CenturyLinks provides on some of these old cables. And I have it. These guys did it for me. And anyway, that's going to be another thing. So that's all I have. And hopefully you guys have our phone numbers, and we're 100% available and open if anybody's got anything they'd like to talk about now or later.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
I guess I do have a question.
Let's,
Right now or not?
probably not right now. We don't want to get into a back and forth. It gets a little difficult to manage. Thank you.
Anything else for the engineer?
Anything else?
I had a question on the plans where it shows the sidewalk as a future development for Kimberly Lane, or I-62, as we're referring to it now. Can you talk about your perspective on that, whether you do it immediately or would wait for some other facet of the development to occur?
Yeah, we decided to show it as future, just because we didn't see the need immediately. So our two users are going on the east side of the site. The sidewalk would go from Pioneer Trail, where there's no pedestrian access, all the way to the east side of the site to serve the two buildings. It won't get used. What happens is those get dilapidated and they don't get maintained. So our opinion was it shouldn't go in until we get some additional users along Kimberly Lane. So that's why we showed it as future.
So you would then do it when some of those, I guess, middle lots.
Correct.
Have property. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Anything else for them?
If I could just address one more thing, Alan, or Mr. Schultz, you had talked about the parking requirement and how the city has not approved a reduction in parking, or at least not recently. We've worked in several cities, and it is more common to have a warehouse parking requirement of 1 per 2,000. And that, just to name a few cities, Blaine, Brooklyn Park, Columbus, Coon Rapids, Dayton, Plymouth, Woodbury, those are all 1 per 2,000. requiring more parking spaces being built that aren't gonna be used is not a benefit to anybody. It reduces the landscape that we can do. So we would really request that you consider that for Lot 2 and Lot 3. It allows both those lots to meet the ordinance or the flexibility then, and then Pella would not have to worry about if they can build their future phase of the building, given the code requirement.
It'll also push us to have tenants show up or people show up that have a lesser traffic requirement. Just by nature, they're not going to have 250 people show up to a building that has 200 parking stalls. So we hope that would be a benefit to all of us.
Gotcha. Thank you. Okay, so we've got a few areas to discuss. Made a couple notes, and feel free to add to it if there's any big topics, but the road and spacing discussion that we had a little bit earlier, landscaping, particularly along the north side against residential, whether that's trying to get that double row of planting or some double row of planting, potentially a fence, some mature plantings as well in specific locations, the parking flexibility, and then I also had one separate item regarding, and Kendra, maybe this is a question for you, the signs on the north-south side of the building, would those be illuminated?
I would imagine that they would be. We don't have the details yet, but our code would allow signs to be illuminated.
Okay. I would, and see what you guys think, I would think if we were to do that, that we'd want to either limit or not allow the north sign to be illuminated facing the residential. The south, I think, would be okay. That's just kind of where
That's a good point.
on that.
I think I asked this question to staff.
So Ellen had asked a question of staff, what we had done for Nelson International, and we allowed the signs to be illuminated during business hours was the requirement in the resolution. The wall signs.
Wall signs could only be lit during business hours for Nelson.
Which went until 11 PM?
10.
Is it-
We didn't approve hours of operation for Nelson. We don't have anything in our code that limits hours of
I thought we
operation.
It was the garage
restricted.
doors, that's right. You couldn't open the garage doors past
Correct.
midnight or something.
So what's hours of operation? Because like I went by there on New Year's Eve and they were illuminated at 10 o'clock at night. I'm sure they weren't in operation at that time.
And the wall sign was illuminated?
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we were going to follow up on and speak with the business owner about and remind them of the condition that it needs to be turned off, that's not in operation.
But I was going to say that their approvals did not limit the hours, and they did talk about potentially having 24-hour operations. They didn't specifically have hours of operation because they talked about emergency service. That's not their plan to run 24/7 all the time, but we will check what their situation is for lighting. I have a note on my to-do list to reach out to them in regards to their hours of operation and that lighting issue, as well as just reminding
Yeah.
them of the importance of their landscaping issue.
For here, I would be interested in.
Yeah, I'm interested in here because there was concerns raised by people south of 55 too with regards to the light, even though they're not Corcoran residents. It'd be nice to accommodate them, but Nelson's another subject, but the concern on that was lighting for people outside of the city of Corcoran too, because we had Maple
Right.
Grove residents.
Okay.
Next to Maple Grove, yeah.
So the applicant indicated hours of in this case for Pella, they did provide hours of operation, and I'm looking for that narrative.
7
I
to
think it went to
11.
11 PM. So if you wanted to specifically approve the hours of operation as per the narrative, and tie that to that, that would certainly be something.
Is there a landscape sign too proposed for that?
Monument sign or?
Monument
sign?
Yes.
Okay.
There is a monument sign proposed, and their Pella office building would be typically 6 AM to midnight are their hours of operation, for the two shifts being 7 to 3 and 3 to 11, and then just, I suppose, cleanup time.
Could we restrict it beyond hours of operation?
Well, you could. There is a safety issue, I think, if you have vehicles, coming and going, you kind of want to.
The monument sign, I mean, we could put different regulation on monument sign versus wall sign, right? A monument sign's not gonna be intrusive to anybody in the adjacent neighborhood, because it's only 4 feet off, whatever, off the ground. But a wall sign is gonna illuminate for a greater distance, and I would think a monument sign would be enough to allow access for deliveries to come in and out, to know where they're at.
Our sign ordinance allows a freestanding sign. It could be a monument, but it could be, I think, as tall as 16 feet under our code, so it's not necessarily just a monument sign, so it can be taller. But certainly, those are things as part of a PUD that the council can regulate. And I think you just want to think about, people, the reason we have signs is so vendors, employees, people can get there. But yeah, that's certainly something we can manage. And again, with a PUD, Nelson was not a PUD. With a PUD, you could limit hours of operation. Now, whether you want to get into a business's operation or not, that's up to the council.
Yeah, I'm thinking more specifically of light for the council to consider. I mean, I understand why companies want to locate on a high visibility area and have signage to attract customers, but we're talking about a commercial building, not a retail building. So illumination of a wall sign after a certain time, I don't think it's going to benefit them per se.
I think it makes sense to, I don't think we need to regulate the hours of operation per se, but I think the time that the signs can be lit, especially as faces residential area, seems to be fair game under the PUD.
Time that to the hours. No, I'd be in favor of that. I don't know exactly where we'd make that change.
It'd be a condition you'd add to.
Yeah, you're right.
If I can ask a question, Mr. Mayor? Kendra, on lighting, we've got light standards as far as wall lights, parking lot lights, those kind of things. Is there a way to limit that as far as, I'll use an example of the intersection of Gleason, is it Gleason and 116 down here, the new lights down at their new intersection by Trevera and stuff? You come up and over the hill on 116 and it's like the city down there, and there's supposed to be 4 street lights facing down, but it lights more than just the area down on the intersection. It is very, very bright.
Talking about Hackamore?
No,
No, Gleason Parkway.
Gleason Parkway.
Okay.
It just, and the way I understand it, the street lights and those kind of things are installed and maintained by the electric companies. Is there a way we can put a standard on that? Because that's number one. Those street lights, I know there's a purpose, I know there's reasons, but I've seen street lights that are more hooded. Instead of the bulb being exposed and it blowing out, it's 120 degrees down or whatever the number is to shine down instead of out and across the fields. Same as the lights on the buildings. I'd like to, while understanding the security and those kind of things and illuminating the buildings and stuff, it would be nice if we could limit the downward lighting instead of the out and across the road and those kind of lights, so.
So, couple things. If I were going to attach a condition on sign lighting, I would make it 16A in Resolution 23003.
Okay.
On lighting, we do have lighting ordinance that requires fixtures as part of the development to have a 90-degree cutoff cast down. They still have light, but they're not glowing up. I think what you're talking about is street lights, and so 2 things about that. That is Wright Hennepin, or Excel. I forget which one.
I don't know who's out there either,
Yeah, so we have limitations about what we can, what options we have for streetlights within the development, but we can certainly look at that. I think one thing that is different is there are different engineering safety standards at a street intersection, like Pioneer and 62 or Gleason and 116 versus within the development. So once you get into
into the development,
Into the development,
it's
we
less. I'll
can
let you say that
have
it
lower
is a lower
streetlights
street
and
light.
manage that, and we can work on that, but I think,
It's a public safety requirement and
Yes.
and an engineering requirement. So it's at the collector roads or the county roads, we have the overhead.
So at 62nd and Pioneer, it would be
It would-
extremely
Well, if you're
lit up.
following our practices, it would be a Cobra light at the more significant intersections, the collector road intersection, and in the development would be the pedestal lights. Those can be more easily adapted. The Cobra ones have limitations because they're intended to light up the intersection for traffic safety and future ped crossings and stuff like that. So there is a distinction. That's a public safety / engineering policy that we've been consistently applying since I've been here. But there is limitations on the larger lights on what can be attached to a light. And we don't get to choose what the light, they give us one option of each, so we can't like
Understood.
select one or anything.
It's not a nice option.
I know, I
see those lights that you're talking about every night from my living room window.
Yes, goodness. I see it every morning at 4:30 in the morning when I drive by. There's nothing we, staff, public safety can do to get the state to put a light system there
Stoplight?
at the intersection.
They control their right of way, so they are very strict with their ICE study. It has to meet warrants.
My past experience doing what I've done, and I know we don't have the money to put in the lights and those kind of things, but past cities have lighted county roads and then reimbursed by the county afterward.
Well, that's the county.
I'm just saying, there's gotta be something there to do this. I don't know why a developer or a business would want to get into this property, and I mean nothing bad. There's no way a semi is gonna be able to leave this on 55 at certain hours of the day. I've spent more time out there than I wanted to, not because the neighborhood is what it is. I go that way just purposely to see the traffic on Rolling Hills, Pioneer, all the way out to 19. There's gotta be some way we can do. Let's get Kristen back and let's do a bill. We gotta get some lights there. And
Wasn't there some discussion of there's potentially other uses that might meet the warrants?
Yeah, I would say more commercial uses, like a McDonald's. I don't.
Again, more
But like-
more traffic. I don't want more
Yeah,
traffic out
it's
there.
the higher demand that trigger it.
You can't have
I know.
something that
I know.
produces high traffic and not produces high traffic
I
at the
know.
same time.
It's a bad intersection.
We've met with them
There's so
3
many of them that
times.
are bad.
I mean, it will take probably an extensive effort to do that. I mean, it's your direction, but I don't want to set expectations that it's a guarantee. They control it and they have a very specific process.
Every intersection in our town is a pain in the ass to get through.
Well, you got that right.
We have, in the course of a year, we have 13 million trips that go through
Yeah.
our town. 13 million. And it's getting bigger and bigger every single year. So there's no easy way to get anywhere.
Where I'm talking about is the lights from 494 all the way out to 101 on County Road 10 were all put in by Maple Grove, reimbursed from the county.
The county
At
does,
some point.
that was
Again,
when
it's a
counties
county
had
deal.
money, counties wanted, the
They
county
didn't
wants
have
to
money,
get,
so
the county wants to give us 10, they want to give us 50, they
I
they
know.
barely plow our roads.
I know.
They barely pave the roads.
Maybe I would be playing a
It's like you're
risky game.
looking for a miracle here.
Yes, I am.
A state
We kind of have to deal in what we can do. I mean, there's nothing, we have to
I
deal what's in
understand.
front of us.
I understand.
Step 1 is John has to run for governor.
Dean made a comment about traffic turning on 55 and semis going elsewhere. And that's kind of a concern of mine, is that will trucks decide it isn't worth it and then want to go Pioneer instead?
And Pioneer,
Guys,
Please.
Pioneer is miserable
So-
already.
When I asked the question to staff today, is when Bellwether came in, there was, part of that development was an improvement on 101 that didn't allow traffic to go certain directions. Is it within our parameters to do a similar thing where traffic cannot turn out of 62 and go northbound on Pioneer, or come off Pioneer and turn into 62, like Bellwether was done?
It's generally easier to prevent a left turn than a right turn in like a geometric, so it's a different scenario. That was, the one that you're speaking to was really a condition of Maple Grove that the county approved, but it really limits southbound lefts as a cut-through.
Right.
And it limits cross-traffic as a cut-through. Now, the challenge of that is that really, from an engineering perspective, really didn't do much because there's no demand. People don't want to do it. So if there was a demand to cut through, people would start cutting around and sneaking through. Right?
They do it now.
Some people might do
They
that.
do it
but,
now, I see
but,
'em.
but that's why, I mean, you can only do, that can deter so much, but you also sometimes can create a worse problem. So if you look at this situation, you start trying to, I don't know how you could limit just trucks, right? So if you did a geometric, some sort of restriction there to turn right, you'd be restricting all traffic going right. You couldn't just pick trucks. And so that becomes a challenge that the simplest way to do it would be to try to, and you wouldn't do it, but you could try to post it no trucks, but that becomes a huge enforcement challenge
Right.
as well. So, and you don't want to put something that would cause people to go out and cheat and kind of do a U-turn and come back north. So there's always more unintended consequences in some of those situations that we'd have to evaluate. The short answer is it's really hard to do in right turns versus left turns. Or if you want to just, close the road, but then that's a state aid road and that's a whole different conversation. I mean, those are your options to deal with trucks going north.
Yeah.
And we did have some state aid projects, so we have some money that we have to run out. So if you do something like that, it's no longer a state aid road, because state aid roads have to connect to jurisdiction. So if that's something we need to evaluate, there's a lot of pieces to that.
Well, I'm not talking about cutting the road off. That didn't come in play in my mind, but what I was talking about is limiting it so truck traffic could not go north on Pioneer from this development.
Yeah, and I think it's hard because even if you eliminate a right turn lane or put something, there's still gonna be a future through and a left. Someone could still come out and weave around or try to do a U-turn, so it's easier to do when you're crossing with like a southbound, like left turn movement. It's easier to restrict than a right turn.
Yeah.
So if someone wants to go north on 19, they'll just go Pioneer instead of, basically, north on Pioneer.
Which they can, it's a public road.
Yeah, I'm not talking about traffic coming off 55 going north on Pioneer. What that did.
No, you're talking about the trucks coming out of this
Right.
development and going north
Right,
on
because they're
Pioneer.
sick of waiting to turn onto 55.
Yeah, but, they will go, if they're trying to go north on 19, they'll just go north on Pioneer.
Yeah, but if you
Yeah, everyone that way.
limit their access, then they can.
They can not.
Yeah.
They only can take a left on Pioneer out of the.
That's what I was wondering about.
Yeah. I have 18-wheelers on Trailhaven in really, really bad conditions. It's crazy.
Yeah.
You need a collapsible road that when a semi goes on it,
We-
like a reverse.
Well, the road did collapse by my house, so it's.
That's true.
Mission accomplished.
The
But I don't know if you can do
geometrics are
that.
hard there to limit trucks only north.
Yeah.
It's just different situation.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is it worth trying to, we have a little bit of time trying to find if there's a use that isn't terrible, that,
I was informed from staff that fast food restaurants would be important as well. I don't know if that's
I don't know if that-
necessarily better than a gas station. I think in some ways it would be.
Is there an axle limit on Pioneer?
Kevin question.
Yep.
So that
is
how
a
you-
limiting factor based on what can come in. Yeah, I don't know what
So
they would have to comply with our road.
Part of preventing traffic going north on Pioneer would be
Enforcing that.
enforcing an axle limit. Who determines the axle limit? Can we be arbitrary about it?
I don't know if we did advertise it like that.
Evaluation, but yeah.
Huh?
Seasonally, I mean, there's different things, but again, it's a state aid road. There's
I get it. I'm just asking.
I'm not all that excited about a fast food, because then we're back to an intercom, and I don't need these people hearing
Thank you.
1/4 pounders with fries.
And that's why I'm wondering if it's,
Well, I don't think we should.
You've all seen
Should
the-
suggest an alternative use for that lot.
right, that's what I'm
Either-
saying. We
either-
table it to see if there's anything.